Welcome to this month's release notes xLights Gem session. Again, another bunch of bug fixes, enhancements. I not nothing too earth-shattering here, but let's just go through them all from the bottom as we usually start here. Dan made a correction to the lay dose sequence, the button here. I don't have a sequence created, but let me create a sequence just so it's really obvious. The button here didn't render properly on Windows. It worked fine on Mac, but it didn't show on Windows, so it had a bad graphic. So that's been corrected. Um, did Keith, Scott, and even Dan made some changes to the underlying OS and various libraries and WX widgets and the GitHub. So just behind the scenes plumbing things that go into xLights. So they've made some updates to that. Keep moving forward. There was a bug that was discovered with the fan and shockwave specifically. And if I drop a fan effect here just to show you, terrible at this fan. Drop a fan effect. As you recall, a number of weeks ago, months ago, the option was added to scale to buffer. What happened was older sequences prior to this feature being added would uh, inadvertently set that to on if you clicked on the effect. So there's a big caveat there. If you clicked on the effect, it would default it to on. So if you're seeing something a little weird in your effects and you've been playing around with your sequences, just double check to see if it turned it on. And there's usually no reason not to turn it on going forward, but maybe it was designed and then sized appropriately with that turned off. So you just want to keep that in mind. It should be fine going forward. Again, that's just the fan and the shockwave. Keith repointed the GitHub as the source for face download. So if I go to the layout, I go to my mega tree and I go to click here and I click on faces and here. Again, this shouldn't impact you. This is more or less good for our admin services so that as we add new faces, so if I click on download images, these are now coming from GitHub as opposed to the xLights website. So it's a little more public, a little more open source so that we can make changes going forward. Um, I made a bug and I made a fix for face effect and cancel this, go to sequences. It's been reported by a few folks and rightfully so. If I go down to, I think I have one here. I think if I go singing. Create your views. That way you can minimize your thing, by the way. If I drag a face effect on here, there we got that guy. So use state as an outline. This is a technique that's used to color props. So if I turn on my outline, first of all, then I can say I want to use this as a coloring of it. This was broken in the last release or the last two releases. So that's been corrected. No changes required on your part. It'll just work next time you render it. All clear and add a clear and a clear selected to the import effects. So if I go to import effects, and I import a thing, here we go. Um, if I go auto map, for example, which maybe that's not going to work because there's nothing to auto map on that guy. Um, well, let me just show you what I'm talking about. So just ignore that I'm actually copying bad stuff. Just assume you've done some sort of mapping and you didn't like it. The only way to clear this out before would be to cancel and go back out. Now we have the option to click a couple of these, for example, and right click, clear the selected, and it removes those out. Or you can do right click and clear all. So that way you don't have to go cancel, come back out, and come back in. This is really handy if you use the auto map. So if you right click and auto map, right click auto map. Oh, he's right here. If I click auto map and it populates a bunch of stuff that you didn't mean to or you didn't like, or maybe you wanted to go back and do a different option, there was no way to reverse that other than to get out and go back in. So now you have the option to clear the selected ones. Very minor change here. This is for the AI stuff that, quite frankly, is not ready for prime time yet, but we're still putting in the behind the scenes plumbing for it. That's under File, Preferences, really minor change. I added the label select service so that you knew what it was, and it didn't. You shouldn't have been able to press the test button until you selected an option here. So now, once you select an option there, you now have a test option. I'm not going to bother doing that right now, but that was just a UI change. Update faces download. So Ed made a change just to go back here. Um, he made some editing changes to the names and such. So if I was to click on elves, for example, elves, boy elf, he's gone back and cleaned up some of the titles and artists and that sort of thing. So I can changes there. Scott added breakdown selected phrases. So let me cancel out of here. Close, cancel. Okay, so we're talking timing tracks. So let's create a bunch of timing tracks here, or a timing track. And let's pretend we have some words here, phrases to be specific. Now you have the ability, before you had to go right click and you would say break down phrases, but now you have the option to click on, so I gotta turn off that button so I can click it. Click, click. No, can I click two of them? I can't. Let's go this way. All right, so I can click a couple of them and say break down selected phrases. So you can choose which ones you want to break down. We don't have the option to, oh, there we go. I don't know what I did differently. I held the control key and enabled to click two of them, say break down selected phrases. So there you go. Now you can do selected phrases, just like you can do selected words. So that was added. Import model will now match groups via aliases. This is a little hard to demonstrate, but if you say imported a model that was a circle model, it would only match on the when it goes to match the groups, it would just match the name of the group. So circle had to match, or all the groups the circles were in had to be exactly matching the groups you had. Now it's actually going to look at aliases and say if you've got an alias to that group, it'll consider that as a match and put that model into that group. It's a little harder to demonstrate that one. There was a specific crash happening with, I believe it was a Hinkspix or Falcon, where the controller had more ports assigned than possible, so it caused a crash. It should have just been an alert or a warning message, but it was in fact doing a crash, so we've corrected that. This was a bug that was found. It's in a showstopper sequence specifically, although this option for an average layer is available for anybody. So let's demonstrate that one. If I go and back to my master view, and I'm going to add a layer below. I'm going to get rid of this just because I don't like that one. I'm going to do a bars effect. And now this is a render style. It's kind of interesting. Maybe a good video just to even show this because the render styles are really interesting when it comes to these things. So red, green, blue, I'm going to change that to right or left, doesn't matter. So you can see I've definitely got a white, red, green, blue, very obvious color. And if I add a layer on top, and without having a layer style or render style, obviously it's going to be white because the white wins. It goes from the bottom to the top. But we have the ability to add a render style here. And I hope I'm using the right term because maybe it's not called a render style, a layering style. Anyway, so the bug was in the average one. So if you'd used average, now it should work fine. It's going to take, and you notice how the colors are an average of the white. So it averages the white with the white, so you get a white, and it averages the white with the red. So you're going to get if you looked at it, you're going to get a little bit of the red, a little bit of the green, a little bit of the blue, because they're averaging the three colors together, and you get a soft red. And in this one, you're going to get a soft green, and this one, you're going to get a soft blue. So if this was used in your sequences before, I believe you ended up getting prior to the bug, I think you got just just a white, I think, or something like that. But now you're definitely going to get the colors that you expect. All right. So just to recap here on the styles, this is where you might want to just use your scroll wheel. I think you can do scroll wheel and you see, okay, what are the different render styles or layering styles and see what the impact is. And I'm just scroll wheeling down to shadow one onto two. That's looks like it's giving a slightly different color green, a slightly di well, it's actually the blue is turns into a purple, so that's kind of interesting. That doesn't really do much. Layered doesn't look like it did anything. Average, we talked about that. Bottom to top, that's interesting. It's using the layer on the top one is the bottom, and the bottom one's the top. Left to right, again, that's interesting. It seems like we've gotten rid of the red in that case. Highlight, looks like it just changed the white. Maybe it's additive, subtractive. Additive and subtractive will be very different because I'm using a white color. If you choose two different colors, you get a different experience. But so just play around with that in your sequencing. Restore the horizontal sash position on the layout tab. So this is the layout tab here. The idea is this guy should now, hopefully if we've got it, although this is always a tricky thing in xLights, it should retain wherever you have this position. We had some reports where every time you open xLights, it would be way up here or way down here. Now it's going to, ideally, it's going to save it from wherever you left it in the last time you closed xLights. Mentioned earlier, Dan has done some changes similar to Keith and Scott with the underlying code. Um, Scott has addressed some Hinkspix visualizer errors. So Joe Hinkle, who's the creator of Hinkspix controllers, um, made some changes to better his product, but it turned out it broke the visualizer for some users, and Scott's addressed that. You would get ports were over the limits, and that wasn't supposed to be the case. So if you're seeing those errors, make sure you're running the latest version of Hinkspix firmware. Make sure you're using this version of xLights. Okay. Node layout of start of model. This was a change. I think I can. Um, um, it's to try and show you. Hopefully, you guys like it. If I go no wiring view, I guess the description is probably wrong, but now it shows you the start of the port. So I have two ports. So it's showing you the start is the blue circle, and it's showing you the start of port two is the blue circle, and the line is showing a difference in the line color so that you can tell which ones are which. It's a little harder, if not possible, impossible to see, but you still get the blue on the light mode, so you can still see the start of the string if you're going to do that. And in gray mode, same idea. You got yellow and yellow, so you can see those things there. By the way, for the custom model, we retained the 1, 2, 3, 4 numbering because it's probably printed on the back of your prop. On other props, you might see it'll say string, it'll say node 1, string 1, and string 2, um, node 1, but it sort of made sense to leave those numbers for the custom model. Display, what do we got here? Store and restore the display the layout size and position. I think that was supposed to be the display editor. So if I go to sequencer and go on display edit elements, before it would always maximize, so you got to hold the control key now. Before it would always maximize display elements to the limits of your screen, which is very inconvenient for some folks. Now it will retain the sizing that you do here, as long as you store it as part of your perspectives. Maybe you're not familiar with perspectives, but perspectives is your layout of all your windows. So if you want to size this here, if I go make it this big, for example, holding the control key, and I go to perspectives, I could say save current, and notice it's setting on my default. So now when I come into xLights, this will now be the sizing for the display elements. And if I dock it or hide it and do view perspectives, save current, and yes, not only will it retain the size, but it will retain the fact that it's hidden, which is probably what you want. And then when you come back and edit, it'll show up, right? And it retains the size. Okay. Let us know if you run into any issues there. It's kind of tricky to play with some of these GUI elements and trying to test all the scenarios. Added a default gamma setting for Falcon controllers. So Culp had this already. Default port gamma. We've added it to the Falcons as well. So you have a default port gamma. What that means is if you have not set the gamma on a model or a port, this will become the default. The normal default is a 1. So most people are using it as the default of a 1. A lot of times when we come into the Halloween, when people want purples and oranges, you'll find that you want your default to be 2.3 to get those shades of purple and orange. And then in Christmas, you go back to the 1. So this way you can set it and forget it. You put your default port gamma to 2.3 for the Halloween season, upload to your outputs, and you'll have those oranges and purples that you're looking for. Okay. Import selected effects now handles submodels. If I go import effects. And do I have it? I'm going to choose this one. Here we go. Okay, so let me just recap. Import selected effects now handles submodels. All right, so I got some submodels here. I can go, um, I don't have auto map set, but what I want to get to is if I had a model, I'm going to say showstopper spinner here. Where's there it is. You can say, I want to just auto map this submodel, auto map selected. Before you couldn't do that. You actually had to include the main model. You had to include that one as well. So in effect, it was going to map everything. But maybe you want to just map portions of your submodels or some submodels, and you can say, I want to do. This doesn't make any sense. I don't have an example to show it to you, but you would right click selected, and now you can do submodels. Same way you could do it over here. You could do right click and auto map selected, and it will do submodels. So it's very specific edge case when you have lots of submodels on a model and you just want to populate one or the other. Oh, that's what I was doing. Wiring view shows start of string. That's I already demonstrated that. So let me go back to this one. Oh, that should have been star model, not a start model. That's why I was confused. Okay, so go to a layout, go here. Let's choose a smaller one. Let's go. Here we go. Right click, wire, no, node layout. Okay, so it's again, it should have said star model, not start model. Um, the previous version had a very compressed view, and it didn't even look like a star anymore. So this has got proper spacing. And note that it does minimize some columns just because it tries to reduce the total width, but it looks like it's very consistent, whereas before it was very squished up and you couldn't really tell what it was. So we've used um, the same algorithms that are used for the other models. So the spacing is very consistent, right? So everything looks as it should. That's what it was. Okay, so we'll correct the notes for next time. And we did that. We did that. Import something. No, we did that. Wiring view. We did that. Add models to grow group now allows regex filter. So that is on the layout, and I'm going to go to the top. I got my new group here, and I'm going to move this bar up so we can see stuff. Come on, where are you? There we go. Okay, so before we used to be able to type in tree. Okay, we got all the trees, right? But now, what if I wanted just the tree and I wanted the bell options here? Well, you weren't able to do that. Well, I guess in this case you gave -1/bell, but what if there was other things in between? So now you have regex, which means you can do an asterisk saying meaning wildcard, and then you can say bell, and you would get everything where the bell and the trees in there. So pretty basic. I mean, you have an asterisk. You could do a question mark for a single character if you needed to, but you're probably going to get away with just the asterisks, and you can find things quickly that way. So if I went outline and I wanted to do, oh, I don't know, I want to do the right side, so I'd say star right. and I could get all the outlines with right. So very basic. And again, it's not a full-blown regex. It's basically your asterisks and your question mark. I think it also allows you to do the caret sign for the beginning and dollar sign for the end. Yeah, the tooltip shows you there. Allows for basic regex values of those characters. All right. Split multiple effects via a right click. So sequence here, I'm going to stick a bunch of on effects, right? Expand that a bit. So we know that if we click on one effect, and if you move your mouse to some spot in there, and I can do right click, split, it's going to split it right wherever your mouse was. So I'm going to right click, split. It's going to split right where your mouse, and I didn't click on it, so I didn't reset. And it's going to, yeah, there we go. One more. Yeah. So I'm going to click on the one, and I'm going to move my mouse, right click, and split. There we go. We know that. But now we have added the option where if you have a multiple selection here and you now have the ability to split, but it's going to split them in half. So you remember now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things here that it's going to split. So let's see what we get. So there you go. You get split, split, split. Even those little guys were split, right? So it's going to split them all in half. Um, and you can if that was your goal, you now can do it with a right click. Everything's in right click, by the way. Handle cursor up, down. This one was a challenge. Let me know if you have an issue with it before. Okay, so it should be obvious that if you arrow down, it should go one row at a time, but it was going multiple rows at a time before, especially when you got to the bottom here. All right. So I tried to test it as much as possible. But let me know if you find a situation where it's not working. It should be what you expect, right? Cursor up, cursor down, hopefully. And if we find some edge cases where it doesn't work, let me know. I double click the groups. Yeah, yeah, see, well, there you go. There are situations where it still goes wacky. And click that up. Oh no, I guess that's because it's a group. It's jumping down. It's jumping down to the next group. I think that's what that did. Because I'm in a group. I've expanded out a group. So let me know. Um, it is kind of tricky to code. I think it's right. I think no, it's no worse off. Anyway, bunch of little changes, and if you're wondering where I got the release notes are here, release notes, and those are the changes for July. Thanks to everybody for contributing. Be sure if you find any issues or something like that. If you have a question and it's not really an issue, be sure and hit the Zoom room up. Ask them to see if they can duplicate it. You can go to Zoom room help. If they can duplicate it, or maybe it's just it's something you just it's misunderstood. Um, issue tracker is if you can duplicate an issue and you're pretty sure it's a bug, let us know there. Enhancement requests are acceptable too. Just don't be disappointed if it gets a thumbs down as we try to implement enhancements that are good for the community, not just one-off enhancements for folks. Yeah, that's it. Hope you have a great day. Be sure and like and subscribe and all that nonsense. It really helps the channel grow. And be sure and drop in on Wednesday nights for our Zoom room session. Um, Andy has been working feverishly to put that together for us this year. And thanks to Andy on that one. Have a great day and see you in the Zoom room, guys.